Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we'll just get started. Again, Marine Mammal Seal was built with the idea of getting us all together and sharing things that we do, things that work well, things that are challenges, and try to support each other, give us a forum. We try to have these meetings once to twice a year, but then we also have a listserv that is meant for everybody to utilize so that we can rely on each other through that network in the event that you have questions or things that you're wondering about other people are doing that could help you in a particular area. To start this meeting off, we'd like to just kind of touch base with all of you about how the year went. We know that the network was hit with a lot of different challenges throughout the past year. I know in Southern California, we had the absolute worst on record domoic acid harmful algal bloom event. And in fact, normally these algal bloom events don't happen until June through September. They also historically were only about every 3 to 5 years and concurrent with El Nino. But what we found is in the last, we've had them consecutively for the last 4 years, which is really unheard of. And this last one was occurred from February through March, as opposed to June through September. And the numbers were pretty crazy. I think we ourselves, we normally rescue 1 to 200 sea lions. We're a smaller facility, along with a few other animals, such as elephant seals. But this past year, we rescued somewhere over 400 animals, which is a lot for us in our small region of 52 miles of coastline. And so it was a really challenging because there's different issues that come along with that. Whether it be just the animals you're bringing in, the caretaker fatigue, or the public and challenges such as animals biting people and having to deal with that. So that was, one of the challenges in Southern California. Adam, I know up north you've had the leptospirosis outbreak.
Yeah, so all across the country, we've been seeing certain different things. So we wanted to provide just a space for people to be able to share a little bit about how they have been working through some of these things, if they're successful strategies. I know down in Southern California, domoic acid. Right now in Northern California, we're in the midst of what has turned out to be the largest outbreak of leptospirosis, a bacterial infection of the kidneys. In sea lions that we've seen in our 50-year history, we were rescuing around 8 animals a day for around 2 months, surpassed around 400 animals just since mid-June in our range. So a lot going on. So we want to acknowledge that, provide space for folks, and knowing that there have been other challenges, whether that's with federal funding, whether that's with legislation and things like that. So one of the things we wanted to do today is be able to talk about hope, obviously, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time really focusing on what's happening around us that we can really amplify, but we didn't want to gloss over that there's a lot going on right now for all of us. So wanted to hear from all of you. Feel free if you want to put it in the chat box. You can come off mute and share. What are some of the things that you've been doing at your organizations that have been helpful as you've worked through some of these struggles, challenges, whether it's animal related, whether it's kind of people and infrastructure related? What are some of the things that perhaps others might be able to learn from you as we've been thinking about how we've navigated some of these challenges of the last 9 months or so? Anything that comes to mind or anything that you want to be able to share with the larger group here?
Yeah, you mentioned, Adam, that while we're waiting for people to comment about legislation, we're really facing something pretty historic with the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and the fact that it's undergoing some potential changes that could be really challenging and devastating for the marine mammals. But as far as hope goes, just to dive into that topic, it has given me hope to see so many people really trying to make efforts to help our legislators understand how important that particular act is and why we need it in place as it is today. So that's definitely given me some hope of seeing different folks reaching out to the government, and as well as different efforts to make people aware, whether it be through email or outreaches, what have you. It's nice to see that people are giving marine mammals a voice, in essence. Um,
So I put a little bit from my end in the chat box. I'm really talking about kind of how over the last year it's come down to partnerships for us a lot. So thinking about how do we maximize uh, how many groups are all working towards the same goal, but are all facing the same challenges. I see Kate also added in thinking about utilizing the volunteers and the community and the fact that they put in so much work, but how they can kind of give back to the community through that work as well. Really appreciate that. And I know a lot of us really depend on that volunteer community for so many things, the kind of the manual labor in a way, but also that inspiration and the storytelling that comes from that we're able to do. Anything else that comes to mind?
um,
Having space, I see from Jill.
to-
Um,
Yeah, burnout is, I hear you, Jill, because yeah, definitely when we get into these spaces of animals coming in like crazy because of leptospirosis or DA, it is very challenging to continue coming in day after day. I know our folks had real challenges with that, especially when you have no choice but to be euthanizing animals a lot. It can really lead to that burnout, and we have to support each other in that for certain.
Excellent. And I see things around kind of getting out into the community, both sharing but hearing from locals, really working to empower those local communities and how they become really strong advocates. So really mobilizing folks. I think the thing that stands out seeing the most is we've seen, whether it's from the animals or the kind of policy side and all the federal changes, there are so many people that want to help. But one of the biggest challenges is they might not know how to help. And how do we connect those dots for people where they're really feeling empowered and have that sense of agency of what is that exact next step that they can do to really help the cause they feel so passionate about. And we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that as we go into the Climate Hope talk and then our breakout groups a little bit later.
Yeah,
I'll give
that
just
is.
another minute for anyone. Oh, yeah,
No,
go for
no,
it.
I was just
Kristen.
going to say that, that really hits the nail on the head as far as empowering people. I think for a long time, people have not used their power and possibly didn't even know that they had it, and how powerful their voices actually are. And so it's really inspirational just to see in the chat people talking about mobilizing members of the community to help and give them a way to do so.
All right, so I encourage folks to continue adding things into the chat box as we go through thoughts, reflections, inspirations. What I think we'll do is we'll kind of step into the next phase, and I'll share a little bit about some of the work that I've been doing, really focused on climate hope and climate communication, focused on actions. And then what we'll do is we've got a couple guiding questions for breakout rooms after that. As I kind of pull up my screen, a little bit of context here. I mentioned at the very beginning. So I oversee a lot of our kind of community engagement, community outreach, public programs at the Marine Mammal Center. Climate change is one of those kind of major topics that we always include in our communications. And I work with a lot of different collaborators around climate change. In particular, a group called NOCI, the National Network for Climate for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. And really, the goal is to shift the national conversation and international conversation, for that matter, on climate to be more productive, hopeful, community minded, and solutions oriented. And we've been able to identify different tactics and kind of verbiage and framing of the conversation so that we can have people better understand climate, better be able to explain it, But there's also a piece of just being able to amplify and elevate existing solutions that are already out there, help people break down kind of what we call pluralistic ignorance, this sense that there's a disconnect between what's happening out there and what we personally believe. And I think there is a big gap when it comes to positive climate actions that are happening. So I'm going to take a little bit of a broader view as we think about just what is the landscape right now around climate communication and hope and kind of the doom and gloom. And then also what's the landscape in terms of beliefs on climate action, and then some case studies to highlight the action that is happening. This is going to be part of a kind of slimmer version of a talk that I also plan to give at the National Association for Environmental Education in a couple of weeks. And then there's also a longer talk as part of a month-long climate change communication series that Noki's putting on next month. That's going to involve a bunch of other talks around communicating climate with littles. We've got resources for American Sign Language and climate change. So I'll put some links in the chat box there if you're interested in diving deeper. But we'll go ahead and dive in. Again, for those that missed the brief introduction, I am at the Marine Mammal Center, which is in Sausalito, California, and operates a response range of around 600 miles of California coast and out on the big island of Hawaii, but work really internationally with partners across animal welfare, across research, across education and conservation. And I've been doing climate change work now at the Marine Mammal Center for over 16 years. And I'll be honest, it can be tough. I think all of us go through those moments, but I have realized that there is a lot going on. I've also realized that if we want to be able to move forward, we have to be telling a story and creating a better world for people to aim for rather than just telling people what they could lose. And you'll see that theme going throughout this. Now, I'll start with a quick quote from someone I look up to when we think about climate communicators out there. Two come to mind, and I'm going to have back-to-back quotes here. The first is Dr. Kate Marvel, who's a climate scientist, works out of the New York area in particular, an author on the big IPCC reports and things like that. And I found this quote particularly striking. So she says that she doesn't have hope, but she has something better: certainty. We know what's causing climate change. We can absolutely avoid the worst, and we can build a better world in the process. And it's that last part, the building a better world in the process, that you're going to see time and time again over the next 30 minutes as I'm talking about how actions to climate change have co-benefits, that there's many reasons to do things that will help climate change. It could be around protecting people. It could be about cleaner air. It could be about job opportunities. It could be about independence and resiliency, all these different things that can strike to the values of our audiences and get them mobilized to take action if maybe the initial value and the initial focus isn't even on climate change to begin with. My other kind of idol and role model out there is Katharine Hayhoe. She's a climate scientist based out of Texas Tech and has various TED Talks that I would highly recommend you take a look at. And she specifically says, unadulterated bad news catches our attention, but lacking any guidance on what to do about it, social science shows it is the worst way to motivate people to act. And I think there is a default because we live in a world of social media and 24-hour news that we want to tell people what the problems are. And it is important to do that to an extent. And I find that sometimes we fall into the traps that we realize that just telling people the bad news will help them do something about it, or will be the single guiding factor of, now that I know this is a problem, I'll do something. There is a missing step there, and something that we need to address as educators, communicators, scientists to help put people on the right path. A lot of this is based out of a study that came out just last year in Nature that really analyzed a lot of climate communications and the impacts they have on people. And when it comes to doom and gloom, so negative emotions, so highlighting the bad, the despair, the doom, the gloom, was in fact the most effective strategy in increasing social media sharing. So there is a place and time for doom and gloom. We think about if you are on social media, it is mostly negative. It is built for doom scrolling. Um, and there is a place for that. Um, at the same time, negative emotions across any framing that you do did not lead to motivating action at all. And in many cases, it actually backfired. Using doom and gloom, instead of making people want to do something, made them want to curl up in a ball and cry, um, or just paralyze them. This sense that it's this overwhelming sense of despair. It's too big of a problem. What can I do about it? When people are being flooded with all of those negative emotions, all the negative stories of damage, um, our bodies have to react. We have to protect ourselves from that. And in many cases, the answer to that is to ignore the problem and go back to what we're doing rather than change what we're doing to address it. So we have to balance if we want to be able to get attention and eyes on things. Negative emotions is not bad. We all at our organizations do those fundraising emails that say, we've had the biggest outbreak of leptospirosis or gemoic acid that we've ever seen. Donate now. That button works. That's going to be one of the best ways to get people to click that one button or share that story. But it's not going to change their behavior. It's not going to really motivate them to address the root cause. For that, we need to build stories. We need to build hope. And not just any type of hope. We need to build something called rational hope, in my attention. And Hannah Ritchie, a data scientist, summed it up really, really nicely here, as you can see with the quote. We need optimism to make progress, yet that alone isn't enough. To contend with environmental crises, make life better for everyone, there's a particular type of optimists. Those that recognize the world will only improve if we fight for it and if we do something. And she broke down this idea of kind of optimist and pessimistic and changeable and non-changeable to where we want to try and focus our conversations, where we want people to hopefully be able to fit in so that they are in the right place to take action. And it's this changeable optimist. The future can be better if we work hard to change it. Just having hope for hope's sake isn't what is actually creating the action that we need to have. And certainly going on the pessimistic side, we're seeing people more scared into action than excited to do anything about it. So, where do we go from here? The power of constructive hope. Study after study, year after year, we realize that hope is a predictor of action and engagement. Um, and that is important because one of the things that we see here is that kind of hope and doubt are significant predictors of kind of some form of action, but there is a hope gap that most people, if they're not seeing hope around them, if they're not seeing others acting and believing, their cup is kind of running empty. That we have to have this mutual support that seeing others act or believe that collective action is happening is what actually creates hope and action later on. Um, and that hope gap is really quite shocking when we think about it from a climate action standpoint, particularly in the United States. So there was a study that came out. Actually, they've been doing this study for, I think, 5 or 6 years at this point, but the new one came out just this last year out of RARE, a wonderful behavior change group that looked at a kind of nationwide survey and perspectives around people as it came to kind of personal perceptions of climate action. Like, what do you support? What would you do? And then they asked people, what do you think others believe in? So you're one person, and that's your view. If you were to guess what the nation thinks on this, what would they say? And the numbers were pretty striking across a bunch of different climate actions. So I'm curious, just in the chat box, when Rare did this study just last year, how many people personally supported policies that helped install solar panels at home? So gave rebates, made it easier, basically encouraged solar panel installation at homes. What percent of people personally supported those policies being put into place? Give me a number in the chat box. All right, I'm seeing 75, 60, 65. Okay, people are feeling pretty Pretty optimistic here. It's always good to see. We're over 50 at least. I see 60. Jane, it's a climate hope talk. What are you doing bringing 30% into this conversation? Come on now. I know Jane, so I get to make fun of Jane in the conversation. Um, Probably not the way to get people to put more things in the chat box, though. I acknowledge that. Fostering data. Excellent. All right. Answer is 90%. 90% supported policies that helped them put solar panels on their roof or made it easier to do that. Now, same question, but that was their personal belief. And if they said, what do you think others believe? So you are in full support. How many other people do you think are also on board? What number do you think came up then? Put it in the chat box for me. 40%, so I'm seeing significantly lower there. 50%, 30, 54. There's a 40% gap between what people believed themselves and what they thought all of their community thought as well. So they're drastically underselling the public support for this. All right, let's think about others. Purchasing an EV, 71% of people personally supported that. When we ask, what do you think about your community? What do you think the kind of general consensus is around this? Dropped to 45. When we think about reducing food waste, 87%, dropped to 60. A heat pump, 81% of people personally supported policies that help encourage the installation of heat pumps, which are energy efficient, kind of 2-for-1 furnaces and air conditioners. But they thought only 46% of people supported those, even though 81% of all the people surveyed thought it was helpful. So what this means is that we've actually created a false sense of reality. The technical term is pluralistic ignorance, and there is a whole field on this within both social science and other sciences around it. There's a spiral of silence. We're not talking about climate change to begin with, so we're self-silencing each other unnecessarily, since the vast majority of people believe about climate change and want to do something about it. And we're underselling the public support that all of these amazing climate actions have. So even if we feel passionate, maybe we don't take that action because we don't want to be that guy, that outlier that is bringing this up or doing this. We're by nature kind of a social network. But there's also ramifications then, not just in how we're self-silencing, but what others around us think. And a study came out that looked at politicians in particular. And they realized that community leaders and politicians were underestimating their representatives or their constituents' beliefs and support for climate policies because no one was talking about this. So our self-silencing, our pluralistic ignorance, and this gap was actually translating to our leaders not talking about climate change and fighting for the policies that the vast majority of us want. And we know that not only is it on that front, but it's when others hear about climate change, when others see climate change, they have a better kind of collective sense of efficacy that this is a problem we can solve, which is, of course, necessary when we're thinking about those changeable optimists and that rational hope. So we have to talk about it. We have to bring up climate change, but we have to bring it up in the right way. We have to help people understand they're not alone. We have to help people understand that solutions exist. And I want to highlight some of those for you. I see Jane raise her hand, though. Happy to answer your question, Jane. Go for it. I'll leave the comics and memes up while this is happening.
Thank you so much, Adam. I had a quick question about the spiral of silence that I've heard this term actually quite often in this work. And I'm curious to hear more, like, why are people not talking? Is it because it's so controversial? Is it because people don't have the, not like, I'm just curious if, and I'm sure there are many reasons, but I'm just curious if there is something that sort of emerges more commonly for why people don't talk about it.
I haven't seen the national data of kind of the barriers. A lot of this stuff came from the Yale program on climate change communication, which is a great resource. They're the ones that do the Six Americas. They're the ones that do kind of public perceptions, beliefs around all these things. So highly recommend looking into them. Um, I view it as two big things. And part of this is within the networks that I've talked to and worked with over the last 15 years. When it comes to our volunteers, a key constituent that many of us work with that are kind of our leaders, every time I ask them before they become a volunteer and go through the training, what are their concerns? What are their barriers? And the same two issues, really, actually, three issues come up. The first is they don't have enough information on the science and are therefore less comfortable talking about it. They don't want to be caught making a mistake or the denier that's going to ask them a question and they kind of fumble over things. So there's an understanding gap, which is where tools like Noki have put together simple metaphors to help explain the climate science. You do not need to be a climate scientist to be able to talk about climate change science easily and quickly. You just need some tools. So I think there's a confidence issue there. Another is they are 100% worried that this is a politicized thing, and why should I wade into those shark-infested waters? Um, and the problem with that is part of the false sense of reality. Most people don't realize that the vast majority of climate scientists, so 99% of all climate scientists, agree this is happening and it's human cause. The vast majority of people in the US agree that climate change is happening and needs to be addressed. That number, somewhere around 76, 77%, depending on what year you look at the data. There's only around 8 to 12% that are true deniers of climate science. They are a vocal minority and they have lots of power. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but 8 to 12%. That's it. The rest are kind of still uncertain. They're not quite sure yet. To put that 8 to 12% in perspective, I saw a study a while back that said 7% of people in the US believe that chocolate milk only comes from brown cows. So I do strongly think that the idea of getting to 100% is not in the cards for us. But remembering that it's only 8 to 12%, you now have 88% of the American public that's either in agreement with you or a movable middle. And people think that number is much lower than what it really is. So helping people realize that misperception, the fact that even if there's political discourse and political differences around this, you still saw some of those numbers. Vast majority of folks across the aisle believe in and support renewable energy. It might not seem that way at a federal level, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the vast majority of folks across the aisle believe in solar and wind and are using it. There are opportunities here. The reasons that they believe in solar and wind might not be for climate change reasons. And that just comes down to how we have conversations with folks and how we move them in a direction around shared values. The last piece that I'll be honest for a barrier. So one is kind of a content gap. One is kind of fear of politicalization. And the third is honestly, they don't want to be a downer. That it's like, this is depressing. I don't want to talk about it. And that's where I parade on Zoom screens and I talk about climate hope and try and help people realize that there are different ways to tell this story. That we want to tell people there's a problem, but we also want to tell people we're going to create a better world for everybody for so many different reasons. If we do this, it's not just for climate. And hopefully those three things are really the secret sauce to break that spiral of silence. And others, feel free to chime in as well in the chat box. Your experiences, your audiences, everyone has a different story here. So these are the things that I've seen in the research and my 16 years at the Marine Mammal Center. But please, the whole point of this is it is a network. We're going to give you time at the end in breakout rooms, but chime in through the chat box with stories, with comments throughout. So where do we go from here? So I have sat on my soapbox and tried to hopefully share the virtues of moving away from doom and gloom in the vast majority of situations, helping people understand they're not alone, there is hope, there are others around, but we have to give them some of those stories. Then it's not enough just to say, you should be hopeful, we're going to solve this. What are the things that we can do for them? So I've got a quick couple trivia questions for you, and then I want to talk about specific case studies here. But my first trivia question for you, and you can go ahead and put an answer in the chat box here. I'm curious what you think. What percentage of cars sold worldwide last year, that's the year we've got a full year of data with, were electric vehicles? So what percentage of cars sold worldwide last year were electric vehicles? Go ahead and give me a guess in the chat box. And forgive me that it takes me a little bit longer since I've got multiple screens open. I'm seeing a lot of D's here. A couple B's, A's, C's. All right, we're kind of all over the board a little bit. Before I reveal the answer, I want to give you just one context. In 2018, so 7 years ago, or actually 6 years ago because of the data, 6 years ago, the answer to this question was A, 2%. So 6 years ago, 2% of all vehicles across the globe were electric vehicles. Last year, it was 20. Talk about a shift. So still a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. But in 6 years, we've gone from 2% to 20%. And in some countries, we're seeing 9 out of 10 cars being bought being EV vehicles. In the US, the number, it's fluctuated a little bit. It's going to go down, I think, a little bit this year, some of the tax credits, but we're pretty close to that 20%. China's a little bit higher as well. So there is a lot of hope here on transportation as we think about electric vehicles, transportation being one of the largest sectors of emissions out there. We've seen enormous progress in just 6 years. All right, one more trivia question for you. What percent of energy added to the grid in the US last year came from renewable sources? So as we think about as we're building infrastructure, as we're adding energy into our mix, what percentage was renewable versus things like methane versus coal, things along those lines?
We're getting a bunch of C's is the
Okay.
dominant one,
Yeah.
a couple B's,
Okay.
more C's coming in, lots of
More
C's.
C's. And thank you, Kristen, for sharing as I navigate a couple screens here. Okay. Fun fact. You're at a climate hope talk. I'm going to give you really high numbers. 90%. Almost everything added to the grid last year came from solar and wind. Almost everything. And worldwide, same thing. Close to 90%. So there is a ton of renewable energy entering into the grid. Now we're using more. There are still emissions. We haven't peaked in a lot of areas, but vast majority is solar and wind that's being used across the US and across the globe as we think about energy demand. And now it's about how do we reduce the use of fossil fuels? How do we decommission some of those more polluting sources and bring in other kind of more renewable options? A study came out just last year that showed that it is cheaper to build new solar and wind farms in almost every part of the world than it is to use an existing fossil fuel plant. So think about that. It is cheaper to build new infrastructure for solar and wind than to use existing fossil fuel. So this is an economic case really quickly. Now, there are a lot of moving pieces. There's infrastructure built in, there's political pressure, all those things. So it's not just money and cents, but we are far from the sense of parity here between fossil fuels and renewable. We are way better on the renewable front than we ever were on fossil fuels. Now, I've got a fair amount of stories that I would like to share with you. I wanted to highlight just 2 areas of climate action, but I mentioned there are a few other presentations I'll be giving in different venues, and I can share links for those and share resources around those areas. But I wanted to just spend the last little bit of time that I have talking about climate action that's protecting people and climate action that's supporting states as we move forward. And I've got a last kind of trivia question, I think, for you. Um, can anyone tell me what this is? So, what is this a picture of?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but I'm going to go for like an AC unit.
It's a very good guess. It's a form of AC. So, this is a heat pump. And I am a nerd. So I like heat pumps. And most people have never really heard of heat pumps. They couldn't really tell you what they are. But a heat pump basically uses similar technology, kind of coils, like your refrigerator, to move air, um, and can act as both a heater and an air conditioner. So think your furnace and your air conditioner units in your house or in your school or in your work in one thing. And most people have never heard of this, but this is like anywhere between 4 and 10 times more efficient for energy than it is a gas-powered unit. So instead of using gas, it uses electricity and is able to be much more efficient. None of the kind of gas fumes, when you think about gas stoves, for example, a lot of that heat dissipates when you talk about furnaces and air conditioners. Um, in a heat pump, it's all channeled directly through where it needs to go. And even though most people have never heard about this, we've actually seen heat pump sales globally exceed gas furnaces for the first time in history over the last 2 years. So more people are adding these energy efficient, kind of 2-for-1 units in their homes and businesses than putting gas furnaces. And this is drastically cutting the home energy use for people across the country and across the globe. Full disclosure, I put a heat pump in my house at the beginning of this year. I live in California. I did not have AC. I had a 40-year-old furnace that was going to die. And at a cost that was at around 50% what I would have paid to just replace my furnace, I got a new energy efficient heat pump that also gave me air conditioning for the first time in my life. Um, so there are tons of incentives, tons of programs, some of them disappearing at the end of this year. If anyone is in the market to replace an air conditioner or furnace, send me an email. I'll give you some clues. You've got until end of December to get anywhere from around $4,000 to $8,000 off of it from the federal government. Cities and states also give money. I got over $8,000 off, like money in my pocket for making this switch. There's no way I could have even just replaced my furnace with a nether crummy furnace for anywhere for how cheap I got what I did. Um, so not only is this an energy saver, I also save money on my energy bills because it's more efficient. But Rewiring America put out a study that was looking at energy use in the house and the air pollution associated with it. You might hear a lot about this when it comes to stoves and gas stoves, and that those fumes actually have negative impacts. They were able to do a much deeper study than what I'm going to talk about today, but looking at if homes across the United States were to make the switch, get rid of these gas kind of spewing utilities and switch to electric units, we're looking at actually saving a ton of people in this change. People's lives, asthma, associated health risks, and heat pumps, just because gas furnaces and air conditioning units are so intensive, is a huge area that we can make a change. So making a switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy can save you money in most cases. It can also help protect the people that live in those units. So there are ways that we can tell this story.
So Adam,
Yeah,
Kate has a question about what is the total cost, and I'm guessing that that's with regard to installing a heat pump.
at heat pumps. Yeah, so I can talk. I will talk anyone's ear off for as long as they want about heat pumps. It's not a very simple answer because it depends on. So furnaces are different sizes. It depends how big of a house you have, how much you're trying to heat. Is it 1 story or 2 story? To give you a sense, for mine, I live in a 1 story house that's pretty old, built in the 1960s. And is around like 1,700 square something. Um, a gas furnace would have cost me around $10,000. An air conditioning unit probably would have cost me around $10,000 as well. The heat pump before I got all the discounts from federal, from city, from state would have cost me around 18,000, I want to say. So this is the outside of your roof, your heating and cooling unit is the most expensive thing in your entire house. So this is the biggest expense, but it is also one of the most impactful from an energy use. Across all those incentives, I wound up paying out of pocket for essentially an AC unit and heater, $5,000. I mean, it would have cost me like 40 grand to install an AC unit and like that's going to vary by where you live because of city, state. Again, there was a big chunk of that that came from federal that's going to disappear by December. But there are some real obvious wins here for making some of these moves. Health related, economics related, environmental related. You'll see my email address at the end of this talk. Please reach out. I'm hoping to build a talk that talks about kind of adventures in electrification because I've had some good ones like the heat pump. I've also had some that were less great. Let's say like I had a stove literally explode in my house and had to quickly switch that. And I switched from a gas stove, which was the thing that exploded, to an induction stove. So again, lessons learned, happy to share. You don't have to be the guinea pig. Um, all right. So we're protecting people. So we're making it healthier to be in your house. Maybe we're putting money in your pocket. We're supporting students as well. So you've got school districts across the country that are switching out kind of diesel powered school buses for zero emission vehicles. Oakland Unified School District in the San Francisco Bay Area became the first school district in the last year to be 100% renewable energy for all the school buses. So you think about all the emissions that come from that, school pickup, all the things where people are just inhaling fumes all the time. How do we make sure that we're providing better transportation for students? And you think about the scale of being able to switch over the school bus system in a district, that is a huge cut to carbon emissions. We think about schools and student groups that have really stepped up and been a big voice. The picture that you see over here is a group of students that petitioned their school to replace a aging gas furnace that they had in their school. And they made a similar case to what I've just made to all of you around heat pumps. And they said, this thing is spewing pollution, it's super expensive, and it's getting old. We need to replace it anyway. Can we move to a heat pump that not only will save the school money, it'll make cleaner air, and it'll give the school air conditioning, which they didn't previously have. And this is a school that actually had to shut down a couple of days over the last few years because of extreme heat, these massive heat waves that was making it almost dangerous for students to be in the classroom. And these students worked with their teachers, the PTA, the school board, the district, and got this massive change done in their school. There are other stories of students. Just recently, I want to say in the last week or two, students in Colorado actually got the Department of Education in Colorado to update the science standards to include explicit information on climate change that wasn't there. This was student-led. So ways that we can make the environment better for our students where they are learning. Supporting states. We're seeing a withdrawal from climate action at the federal level. There's no part of my conversation in this talk that is going to praise action at a federal level right now on climate change. I will praise all the things that are about to go away before the end of December and encourage you to take advantage of those tax credits and those tax rebates and things like that. But where it's going to come down to is cities, it's going to come down to states, it's going to come down to local communities. And there are lots of reasons why those cities, states, and communities will take action on climate change. It could be around investment. There's a lot of money to be made in the development of these things, job creation, all these things that you keep hearing about on the federal level, renewable energy can be an answer to those problems. Energy burden, the cost of how much energy is right now across the country, energy rates are skyrocketing. It is making it harder for people to pay their bills and live more than month to month. Renewable energy can help with that. Reducing air pollution, a similar thing to what I shared around the school buses, and simply building resilience. It doesn't matter if we put our hand in the sand and think that this problem doesn't exist, or we take action and we try and identify it right now. We're gonna face hardship, extreme weather, wildfires, hurricanes, whatever it might be. By taking action, we can help with that adaptation level, protect people, which is in the best interest of everyone, regardless of the political party. I am curious as we I think this is my last trivia question for you. I'm curious when we zoom out, we look at renewable energy in the United States. What are the top producing states for renewable energy? Go ahead in the chat box, put what you think. You don't have to put all top 5, but give me some states here. Who do you think is number 1? Who's in the top 5 for producing the most renewable energy in the United States? Crystal says Texas. What else? California, New York, Arizona. What else? Nevada, Washington. What else? Iowa. That one we haven't seen before. California, Nevada. So far, we've gotten the top 3 in here, but my guess is that you wouldn't guess what the third one was here. Rhode Island, good guess. All right, so number 1 is Texas. I'll just go ahead and say that right now before I give you all the others. Number 2 is California. Most people would start to guess that, but I think it is important to just take a moment and realize that the state that produces the most renewable energy is Texas. There's a lot to unpack there. Number 2, California, but take a look at number 3, 4, and 5. So kudos to whoever said Iowa. I was not expecting that one to pop up, to be honest. So bravo. Oklahoma and Kansas. For all of the conversation, for all the politicalization that comes with renewable energy right now that you hear in the news media, that you hear in stump speeches, that you see on social media, 4 of the 5 top states producing renewable energy in the United States are conservative states in terms of they have conservative leadership and representation in major bodies of federal levels. 4 of the 5. Florida, which isn't on this list, overtook California with solar power just this year. They don't have as much wind energy as California, so that's why they're not in the top 5. But Florida, a state that has essentially outlawed saying the words climate change, produces more solar energy than California. 15 states get at least 30% of their electricity from renewables. 30%. Now, that's up from just 2 states 10 years ago. So we went from 2 states to 15 in 10 years. The Southeast, in particular, places, again, not known for kind of climate leadership from a federal standpoint when we think about representatives at a federal level, I should say. Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, they're generating 27 times more solar power than they did 10 years ago. And one of my things that really stood out to me, just like a group I was not expecting to see pop up on this list, Arkansas, just last year doubled their solar capacity. They're now the 8th leading solar producer. Again, these are kind of unsung heroes. I'm not sure a lot of people would know this. And that starts to create this story that is perpetuated that might not be helpful, that it's the blue states or it's whatever it is that the Democrats that are trying to do renewable energy. the leading renewable energy providers are by and large conservative states. They might not be doing it saying this is for climate change. They're doing it for all the other reasons I talked about. Climate change is just a co-benefit of it all. Now, when we get down to a city level or a school district level, there are some really amazing initiatives. And I could go on for hours for this, but that's not the plan. So I just wanted to highlight three particularly unique things that I've seen in just the last year that could be used anywhere across the country and just show really unique leadership and creativity. So in Atlanta, they deal with the urban heat island effect. So this are particularly city centers just get really hot and it's really dangerous. So what they identified is they put in place policies to help with a cool roof system. So the same way that if you walk outside in a black t-shirt versus a white t-shirt, the black t-shirt absorbs a lot more of that kind of radiant energy. You get warmer. White t-shirts reflect it. Just painting the roofs of these buildings is estimated to cool the city between 2 and 6 degrees during peak summer temperatures. And because of that, there will be a kind of significant decline in the need for air conditioning. And they imagine it will save over $300 million in energy savings. They partnered with a group that can do this called the Smart Surfaces Coalition that works with cities all across the country. And they put in place a simple ordinance. They worked with the city board and they said, for any new construction, we're putting in a cool roof. Doesn't necessarily impinge on other people's freedoms, doesn't make people retrofit anything. They gave the option, they made it more common. They said, let's set things up so that we've got cool roofs moving forward. And it's making an enormous difference. In West Virginia, Wayne County School District identified the same thing that so many others have, which is solar energy is cheaper than a lot of other forms of energy. And they happen to have a ton of buildings and a ton of space that they could put solar panels on top of. And they decided that they were going to move to be 100% powered by renewable energy, particularly solar. So this is in coal country. This is a prominent kind of former mining area. And they said that it was driven by one clear objective. They wanted to reduce operational costs while fostering local economic growth and engaging the community. They hired locals, they created jobs, they powered the school district with renewable energy. And it allowed them to save, or they have estimated cost savings because this is spread out over 25 years. It's going to save that school district $6.5 million, which they plan to then use to hire more teachers and to better pay their teachers and to better support the school district. So instead of paying energy bills, they're paying the people that can make the school district more impactful for the students. Huge, huge outpouring of support that came from the locals in West Virginia around that move. And then lastly, one that I just thought was really cool. I'm not going to lie. Buffalo set up an e-bike library. You take the exact concept of what a book library is. It's free. You get a card. Check out an e-bike for anywhere from a day to a week at a time. And this way, if people want to try e-bikes, they can do it at no cost. The Buffalo Library, or the group that supports the Buffalo e-bike library, provides training for anyone who wants to do it at no cost. But this helps people that maybe are transportation insecure. Now they have an option to get from place to place that they didn't have before. It allows people to try e-bikes. It normalizes this option, a relatively simple action that can happen in any community that helps promote climate action that can be really helpful. So all of this to say, this is just a short list of different things. There is a lot out there, and we're going to take some time to focus on what you have seen in the stories that you have. So as I start to wrap up, a couple closing remarks. Hopefully this gave you hope. Hopefully you're starting to see light at the end of a tunnel that we can work towards to create this better place. To adapt something that Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson created, this Venn diagram, the way forward is to really think about where do you fit in climate action, and everyone can be a climate hero. And it comes down to thinking about what are you good at what needs to be done and what brings you joy, and finding that sweet spot. And with that in mind, I have two asks for you that are going to translate into our next steps and our conversation in the breakout groups. The first is I hope that you'll take some of these and let's think about changing the conversation. And then it's what are we going to do as a next step? And when it comes to changing the conversation, Anne Therese Genmari, who wrote the Climate Optimist Handbook, has a couple really simple tips. So the first, when we think about changing the conversation, what I'm going to challenge you to do is let's shift from responsibility to opportunity. So what that means is rather than seeing climate action as a burden, reframe it as a thrilling opportunity to create new norms. So let passion for a better world fuel commitment, not guilt for what we're going to lose. It's completely flipping the thing. This isn't about sacrifice. This is about building a better world. Instead of focusing on minimizing things, let's think about maximizing things. So it's not about how do we just strive to shrink our carbon footprint. That is an honorable thing. We should be thinking about that. But it's mostly focusing on how can I make a positive difference? So rather than just shrinking a carbon footprint, how do I maximize a positive footprint? How do I bring things to the table? How do I build things? How do I inspire things that can help people see this future that we all want to strive for that is better, stronger, more resilient, healthier, whatever it might be? And then let's move from this idea of trying to save a crumbling world. It's just, it's taxing. There's a lot of climate anxiety out there already. And I don't think the idea is that we want to just preserve what we had. We're the first generation at this point, all of us here in this room and kind of alive today. We're the first generation with the tools and awareness to shape the better future that we can. The technology exists. It's not a burden at this point. This is an invitation to create that better world. And how do we mobilize people under that kind of movement to do it? So a couple of simple things as we think about framing the conversation on climate change to move from the old to the new. What would I hope that you do with this is I hope you talk to people. Let's break that spiral of silence. I know many of you are already doing this a lot. I'm going to challenge you and be that guy to say, find some new people to talk to as well. Let's move out of our little bubbles that feel maybe a little bit safer. How do we bring this up? Not just in our education programs, if you're already doing that. If you're not, how do you bring it into your education programs? How do we bring this into other community groups that we work with as well? How do we join a community and move from being an individual to something that is bigger than that? That's going to give us the social and emotional support that we need. It's going to give the infrastructure that helps do things. It's going to lead to bigger things. These are just a few that are out there that are, for the most part, national, so anyone can join. It's going to allow people where they don't feel like they have to put the weight on their shoulders to take a next step. There are some amazing things that are already happening. How do we enter into those and continue to grow the momentum that's there? And again, I represent NOKI up in the top right, the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. We've got 800 members across 46 states and over 600 organizations at this point offering climate trainings at no cost or low cost to folks. And we've got a lot of resources that I'm happy to share about. And then the last thing, and this is going to be what we kind of talk about in the breakout groups, is commit to something, whatever it might be. But put a stake in the ground, big or small right now, something that maybe inspired you in this talk or something that's been rattling around in your brain. Commit to some action, whatever it is, take that next step on that journey so that we can continue with addressing these problems and creating that better world for everybody. And again, we're going to have a couple guiding questions for you in just a second. Last but certainly not least, oops, things skipped ahead there for just a second. If you are interested in more information, highly recommend checking out noki.org as a resource. So again, that's the National Training Collaborative that the Marine Mammal Center leads. There's also the Climate Literacy Collaborative, which has a monthly newsletter that is mostly just chocked full of hopeful climate stories that I send out. If that's something that you're interested in, go ahead, send me an email. You've got it up on the screen, and I will add you to that monthly newsletter. Noki also has a monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to. You'll see it on the homepage. Last but certainly not least, a quote from Joanna Macy, environmentalist who passed away just within the last month to 2 months. But she says, active hope is not wishful thinking. Active hope is not waiting to be rescued by some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way, and we're here to play our part. And this is how we can help people see themselves as part of the story of creating that better world, whether it's for climate change or whether it's for the communities that they are a part of. So with that being said, I know that was a lot of staring at a Zoom screen. I've got my contact information up on the screen here. I'll put it in the chat box as well. And I'll also put our 2 guiding questions that we have as we start thinking about jumping into breakout rooms for the last kind of 15 minutes here. So that's going to be my email address. And then we've got 2 questions that you're going to start to see that I would love for us to be able to talk about. So first, what communities or community level action is happening in your area that you can amplify or connect to? So I highlighted the e-bike program in Buffalo, cool roofs in Atlanta, other things. What's happening in your area that you're going to be able to talk to that's going to be particularly relevant and exciting? And then what are you going to commit to as you think about a next step moving forward? Oh, so hold on. I don't think I put that in the right place. Let me try that one more time.
Now I've got the breakout rooms ready when you're ready.
Perfect. All right, let me just put it in the chat box so you see it. Those are the 2 questions I just said aloud, but it will be in the chat box so that you can see it. We'll take around 10, 15 minutes or so, a chance for you to meet other folks in this network. So please introduce yourself, and then a chance to reflect on where do you want to go from here and what is your climate story. So go for it, Kirsten.
Okay. Let's see. I think I did it right. I don't know. And then I guess we just join whatever room, or do we?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to go ahead and join a room, go for it. I might not, simply because I just led all of this.
Right,
and
true,
I
true.
will bias
They'll-
things.
Yeah, right. They'll lean on you.
So yeah, so I'll stick around in here, but if you wanted to jump into one, I would say go for
Okay,
it. And
sure.
then do you have this on a timer at all, or should I just close the rooms when it makes sense?
Just close the room when it makes sense. I wasn't sure about
Okay.
the timing of
Yeah.
it. So
I'm gonna give probably
okay.
around 10 minutes, and then we'll bring people back and we'll do like 8, 9 minutes
Okay.
Q&A or last thoughts type of thing. So
Sounds good. Okay, I'm gonna
go for it.
join. Cool. Hi there. I just thought I'd pop in and join you guys.
Hello. I don't think we've done introductions yet.
Okay.
So I can start.
Sure.
I'm Ryan Murray. I work for Mississippi State University. We have a marine mammal and sea turtle program down on the coast, so we partner with the stranding organization Institute for Marine Mammal Studies. So I work with that program and do some community outreach through the university, working with vet students mainly.
Nice. Tristan, how about you?
Sure. So we're lacking on the marine mammal front here at the Florida Aquarium in Tampa. So we do not have marine mammals within our institution. However, we do run, yeah. Well, they're due to come our way, sea lions, just like in 2028. So we still have a couple more years. So I'm warming up. But we also run a boat trip a couple of times a day that does view, if they're around, wild bottlenose dolphins that live in the Tampa Bay area. And then on a slightly different, I guess more on the climate change side of things, our sea turtle conservation efforts there, rehabbing a lot of sea turtles, and also a lot of work in the field of corals right now. So not
Yeah.
directly, indirectly related to mammals, but
That is
two of
just
our areas,
fine. It all comes together and those
they're all
turtles need a
connected.
lot of help. Yes, exactly. The coral definitely needs help. So glad to hear that you guys are doing that. Kira, what about you? Or is she taking a break? I like her picture. Kira, are you
Hi,
there?
I'm so
Oh, there you
sorry.
are.
Yes, I am. My Wi-Fi is cutting in and out, so hopefully you all can see and hear me. But hi everyone, I'm Kira. I am the marine science educator at the Marine Mammal Center, so I do work semi-directly with Adam. My primary role is to support our high school programs. So we have a couple that we offer for students in the Bay Area to get to know how to help rehabilitate marine mammals. So we have them primarily work with like elephant seals, sometimes harbor seals, sea lions. I also help with tours in our middle school program. So really interested in hearing and learning more because our high schoolers do participate in the summertime docenting. So talking to visitors about climate change and ways to take action. And a lot of them are very impacted, but also very scared. And I can resonate with that, especially when you're a teenager involved in that work. So, yeah, really interested in learning more.
Yeah, I second you on the scared thing. I hear that a lot from younger people. In fact, my nephew is one of those. He's more gotten to be at this point a fatalist about it. So I think that there is a lot of concern on younger people what their world is going to look like in the future, which gives us all the more reason to craft these messages of hope so that they can actually see that things are happening in a positive way. So are you guys, is anybody doing anything that is surrounding climate change in their worlds?
So being in Florida, that's a little harder for us right now. So
Yes.
we don't have a lot of very direct messages in
Mhm.
regards to it, but we are trying to figure out how to frame it with the climate that we have currently.
Mhm. That is really challenging,
Yes.
being in that state. Yeah. Oh, I was in Florida for 18 years. So, and I think it's just gotten worse, that rather than better. So I hear you on those challenges. You have to be creative, especially if it gets to the point where you can't even use the words climate change.
Mhm.
And, yeah, so that's challenging. Um,
We'll figure it out, but
yeah.
it's different.
Yeah. I was gonna say on a similar note, being in Mississippi is often tricky as well with
Mm,
that.
mm,
Through we do some like outreach and education, like I had mentioned, with our vet students at the College of Veterinary Medicine, and they come down for a student rotation where they're exposed to. They do like a marine mammal health exam and a sea turtle health exam and a necropsy, and we've started to incorporate a beach cleanup into that rotation as well,
nice.
and just kind of exposing those students. Just a lot of them have never been to the coast ever. So it's 4 hours away from the university in Starkville. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of get them exposure to the marine environment, as well as in some of those presentations, we talk about climate change and the ways that marine mammals and sea turtles are affected. But that's a lot of, I would say, like, we're probably the biggest part of their conservation messaging within vet
Mhm.
school.
That's interesting. I never thought about that of incorporating that into a veterinary student's curriculum. And it's nice that you're doing that. I mean, I would say more than likely you are leaders in that. So you should be really proud that you're incorporating that. And hopefully, if there are conferences and things that you guys go to, that you can share that because I have not heard of that up until now. So congrats on that.
Yeah, thanks.
Mhm.
The two vets we work with are really leaders in that.
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, super important. And again, I come from a background of like marine biology and went to school in Florida and like was exposed to all of that in my undergrad. But it's interesting that they have a very different perspective, and you know, on climate change as well, and through the university and how it's taught.
That's excellent. Fantastic.
Thinking about the question directly in terms of my work, I feel that I can resonate with what you all are sharing in terms of like what the students' prior knowledge is. When we lead tours for like our middle schoolers and high schoolers, they're coming to the Marine Mammal Center for field trips. And even though our center is on the coast and we're in the Bay Area, some of them are coming a couple hours away, so they don't have that access or connection to the ocean. So it's really interesting to form that connection at a young age for them and inspire next steps. And then I see a complete opposite shift with our high schoolers who apply to join our program to help rehabilitate seals and sea lions because most are already interested in pursuing a field of marine biology or very passionate about environmental science, marine science. So it's really interesting to kind of navigate both realms of like inspiring that action and or supporting their own efforts and encouraging them. But yeah.
Well, it's so important because you can really, by doing it, make a difference, not only in their lives, but helping them understand how empowered they can be. I always like to, I don't know if we'll have enough time for this, but it's sharing a story that shows that kind of impact, but on a very different topic. Back when 6 million dolphins were dying in the tuna industries, I worked at Dolphin Research Center, and they had a school group from Colorado come out and learn about it. They went back to their school district, got tuna banned at their school and then the entire district, and it caught in the news. And then it went national news, and then StarKist actually listed them as one of the reasons that they adopted the Dolphin Safe label. And, you know, so it can, these kind of movements can have significant effects. And, you know, all of us can be a part of it because, you know, just teaching those students from one seminar, they took it and ran with it. So I'm excited to hear about the different people working with the different age groups, because we really do need to tackle this from all areas. And you know, I really like what Adam's messaging is about climate hope, because the young people in particular who are growing up in this and hearing all of these doom and gloom really need it. So it's you know, very empowering to me to hear what people are doing in different realms, even the veterinary realm. That's I'm still blown away by that. I think that's really cool that it's being included there too. So I don't know if Adam is going to have us bounce back, because it should be about that time. Oh, there we go. So see you all in the big room.
Welcome back. Room 3, I think.
Yep. Good talk. Very good talk. Very inspiring.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
Different
particular
ways.
any particular standout things that kind of rose to the top in the conversation?
Everybody was kind of tackling it from a different angle, and in different realms, which was interesting. And one that I'd never thought of, Ryan had mentioned, is that in their veterinary program, they're actually talking about this messaging, which I'd never thought about that. So
Yeah.
that's, totally different realm. Ooh, I like
Amazing.
those sea jellies in the background. Ariel, I love your background.
Thank you. We were just talking about the background that I'm down on the water, so I'm backlit, and so it's just like a blaring sun, so I have to have something to cover that up.
Their t-shirt's pretty cool too, by the way.
Goodwill, thrift,
Oh,
don't buy new.
wow. I love
Love
that's
it.
even better. Not only are you representing marine mammals, you went thrifting. That's great.
Oh, amazing. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you were able to meet some new folks from across the country, start to think about kind of the synergy that might exist between our groups, but also think about kind of where do we go from here. So we've got just a couple minutes left. I wanted to open up the floor if people want to share via the chat, or come off mute, anything that really stood out and resonated with them from the conversation in the small groups, or if there's questions or things that you wanted to bring up from anything we've talked about so far at the workshop, you can again come off mute or put things in the chat box, and happy to address them. Yeah, go for it.
I can say one from our group. We talked a little bit about public transportation and increasing public transportation use to get to the facilities. And Jessica had a really great solution that they've been doing where for people who like park off site, they will enter those folks into a raffle at the end of the month for a gift card. And I was like, oh my gosh, if we could do that with like, if volunteers and people coming to the marina or whatever to public transportation and then entering them into a raffle, that would be really cool. So I think I want to incorporate something like that into ours.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love all different businesses and groups have these like commuter incentive programs. And there are some like federal benefits that can come from that. Like you can write things off in your taxes and stuff like that. Some companies to encourage it give various like HR type benefits that I've seen. And they're kind of like playbooks that you might be able to find from groups like Project Drawdown that like for, I'm just making this up for sake of conversation, for like every 10 days that you kind of carpool or public transit in rather than drive yourself, you accrue like an extra like hour of vacation time type of thing and various things like that. So there are existing models that can easily be brought out, and some can be obviously much more unsophisticated in terms of like raffles for t-shirts and swag and pizza and things along those lines. So I love that idea. Thanks for sharing. Anything else that stood out either from your conversations or that you want to just share, or questions related to the concept of climate hope and climate action around the country?
I think this is an excellent discussion, Adam. Thank you so much for
pleasure.
bringing this forward. I really think that hope is so imperative right now, to be arming people with the know that we can do this together. And there are small things we can all do, but also human ingenuity is a pretty amazing thing in itself. I'll share one of my favorite climate effort out there that I just thought was fantastic, and it really resonates with elementary school kids. And that is UC Davis created a cattle feed made out of algae that reduces cow methane output by 80%. So people can still eat beef, yet we could be reducing methane output. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, lots of really cool things out there.
So hopefully you all really enjoyed everything today. We are always looking to try to bring forward maybe ideas and content that would be helpful to you as marine science educators in a field that we all have something relative. And so if anybody has any ideas, you can feel free to put them in the chat right now or email us. We also are very big into having other people present. If you have something that you would like to share or interested in presenting to the entire group with regard to marine mammal conservation, marine conservation, the different areas that we're all trying to work toward, whether it be, climate or reduced plastics or things like that, please let us know, because this group is for you. It's about a support system that we're building to help you as educators in the field have a community to come back to and be able to draw from. So we really thank you for joining us today, and we will be sending out a follow-up kind of evaluation, but also with questions for you about what you would like to see in future meetings, which we tend to have early fall and then early spring before the sea lions really start coming in. So. Any other thoughts, Adam?
I don't think so. I'm gonna just put a couple things in the chat box right here. If interested, although it might try to copy and paste a couple things that might not go over their limit, but a couple other things if you're interested in knowing or just kind of professional development on climate change. So Noki's got their climate month of action and hope. So there are 4 different talks all happening next month. So you can see the links to those. Feel free to share those with any of your colleagues. They're open and free to all. So on different topics ranging from hope to kind of communicating with littles at the end of the month. Nice. So and if there are questions, comments, feedback, please do let us know. Always happy to reach out to us. And if there's anything we can do to support your programs as you think about talking about climate, any of the other synergistic topics across all of our organizations, let us know how we can support.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye. I already hung up.
Oh, this was a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, I didn't see what we finished with. What was the?
I think it was 17 people total.
17? Not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah, that's pretty good for our group historically. And it's what's neat is that it also was around the country too. It wasn't just
way
one
more
area.
Representation actually on the East Coast than I thought.
Right. I'm like, what happened to you people? Like, what happened to Dave? You know,
yes, this is
something must have come up.
Yeah. So who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I do have to jump to another meeting.
Me too. Me too.
But if you have any feedback or any ideas, this is actually a version of a talk that I'm going to give like 3 more times in the next month. So if you've got any feedback, I would love to hear it as I continue.
Yeah, I mean, immediately I thought it was a fantastic presentation. You know, it was succinct, but it also had a lot of good examples. I love the trivia too, because that blew my mind. I was just like, are you kidding me, really? And that in itself was so super hopeful. So I may pick your brains in the future because I'm trying to get my educators to really focus on that piece of hope in each category. So yeah.
Cool. Let me know how I can support.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Adam. All right, bye.